Welcome again to Mystic Revolution. This week we are continuing our conversation about dancing with the ideas of being a reader and a readee, a little bit more behind the curtain conversation about what we can do to be really good readers and also receivers of a reading. But before we dive into this, let's do as we do and just do a little bit of meditation. So go ahead and just close your eyes and see if you can allow your focus to drop into your body. Allow yourself to drop into your heart, or if that feels uncomfortable, you can see if you can drop into your belly or your lower belly. Just getting out of the headspace for a little bit and tuning into the body. And just notice how that feels and see if you can allow your body to really feel a connection with the earth below. To help with this, we can tune into our root chakra, that space and place at the base of our spine that really takes up the whole part of your body down there. And you can envision a beautiful ball of light. And if you like, tune into the idea of grounding, of having a solid foundation, and let yourself put down a grounding cord, something that feels solid, strong, comfortable, whatever you feel like you need. Let's go ahead and take a nice deep breath in and exhale. And remember that we also have beautiful sky holding us above. If you like, you can tune into the sun or a bright star, a beautiful ball of light that allows you to tune in with the universe and the God of your heart. And let's see if you can bring in a nice pillar of energy or connection straight through the top of your head and into your own heart. And just allow yourself to be with the idea of being connected to the earth, connected to the sky. And with that, let's take a nice deep breath in and exhale out. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes or feel free to stay in a meditative state as we continue this conversation. Hi, Wendy. How are you?
I'm awesome. What about you, Susana?
I'm doing really well. And I think we talked about, continuing the conversation, we had dialed into sort of, a thing that commonly happens where people go to a reader about a relationship or the status of a relationship or when will I meet my beloved. And that's very common. And there are just some things to sort of watch for and think about if you're giving someone a reading in this, but also if you're going if that's really what you want information about. Would you like to sort of pick up where we left off?
Yeah, and we had been talking about how very often the answers aren't about when or who or what or where. It's about us.
Yeah.
It's about us and where we are and what we can have and who we're being and
Yes.
what our trajectory is, our momentum, our choices.
Yeah.
These are the important parts. This is why I love, I'm a healer first and last and always. And to me, that means helping myself and others come to our fullness, right? It doesn't mean just fixing broken things.
No.
And maybe I've said this before sometime, but it just makes such a difference. Can I have this? Well, the answer is no. In this moment, no. But can I have this? Let's do the energy. Let's clear what's in the way. Let's work out whatever's in the karma, in your agreements, in your past, in your in your projections for the future? And then the answer can be yes.
I
And
think
the answer,
that's so important because, right, can I have this? No, like no one wants to hear that. No one wants to face that. But let's be clear, right? We're talking about reading energy, and we're talking about reading energy for a healing.
yeah,
And so if someone has a yearning or a desire, or has consistently not been able to find a beloved or a romantic partnership, whatever flavor of that you want,
mhm,
why is that? And as Wendy discussed last time, like the looking behind and the deeper, what's the deeper question really? And what's the deeper thing that needs tending to? And we're reading energy that is in the present time. I think that's so important to say, right? This is not a future projecting. We're reading what's going on with a person in the moment,
mhm,
and that can change. That
yes,
can be changed. Yeah.
yes,
So
yes,
in this moment, if someone's coming and saying, well, feeling all these feelings and wanting all these things in this moment, and they don't have that, they don't have it.
right. And what's the trajectory?
What's the
What,
trajectory? Yeah.
okay, if you keep going this way, you're going to end up in water. I can tell you. And, and if you go this way, it's going to be up the mountain, but we can shift that.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to go up the mountain? Do you want to be in the water? Do you want to have a partner that is comfortable for you? Do you want, then that's not mountain or water. That means coming to something this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's in the realm. I use those pictures when I talk about in training readers, but also in training readees about what predicting the future is about. Like, we don't want to program people,
No,
and we don't want to just give them false hope.
no.
We want to say, look, you keep going like you're going, and it's like it's water for you. Um, but you can shift. We can shift any moment, and turn and stop going east and go north.
Yeah.
And anybody can do it. It's not so easy. And the once when we get good at it, it gets easier, but it's never easy. It's never easy to shift. Just like in physics, you get a certain momentum in a certain direction, and it takes something. It's called inertia. It takes something to shift.
It takes something to shift. And, so often in relationships, right, we have beliefs about it, whether about our own lovability.
Yeah.
We have patterns that we've fallen into. And, that's where we go back to like living from the inside out. A good reader can help mirror. We talked about the sacred mirror, right? Help mirror this information back in a way that you can hear and or sense, and maybe give you some nuanced information about how to really start tending to it so that you
Yeah.
can have what you want. And so it's less about, well, if you do these things and act this way or go these places, you'll meet your beloved, or I see you're going to meet someone within the next 6 months. I mean, that could definitely happen. But if we're perpetuating the same beliefs and the same energy and the same patterns, the likelihood is less.
Yeah. And that might be the person, but we could F it up.
Yeah. Right.
It's the person,
Mm.
but I'm not ready. It's the person, but I can't have it. It's the person, but I'm still hating on men, or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I'm also going to say the person could totally show up because we're really focused on, this gets into, our ideals about things, our perfect pictures. We're so focused on this picture that is based upon our inner thinkings, workings, that we actually miss the perfect person for us.
Yes. It's
you
so
know,
easy, right? Oh,
so
they
easy.
have these three things, but not this. So forget it.
Yeah.
Or, they said shibboleth the wrong way. It's just that's a religious reference, but like they're not what we expect.
They're not what we expect.
And yeah, so and we're using the relationship thing because it is the most common. But also it's the same exact information around career and money and health and wellness and all
Yeah.
these things that are the most popular things to like go to a psychic and find out.
Yeah.
And it's the how we got here, as I was saying, they're my least favorite questions. It's like if you really just want answers to those and you don't want to engage about the dance of realizing them in your life, then I'm just really not interested. I refer those out, honestly. I'm done. I'm done with it. I mean, I just like, because there's only disappointment. I mean, I'll just say like, okay, well, you can't have it next, like, because I'm not going to blow sunshine up their skirt about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that sounds terrible, but I'm just like, I have plenty of um reader friends who are not sick of those questions.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like I talk to them about like, do you want to actually engage this, or do you just want a pill? Do you just want the silver bullet? Do you just want, on July 12th, the person's coming? Okay. Well, then there's nothing in it for me to engage you with.
Yeah. And I mean, I've actually had that happen where someone came for a reading healing, and really the conversation to look behind and go deeper. I mean, it was obvious. I think it was obvious to both of us,
Yeah.
but they didn't want to do it. They wanted me to do something
Right.
to them so that they wouldn't have to do that. And,
Yeah.
I think a different person might have and maybe started telling them what to do, like advice or a guide, directions. And don't get me wrong, I help people, I give them guidance if they want to work the tools, or if they're like, ways
Yeah.
to help heal and tend to themselves and or to expand themselves. But that's different than like starting to switch into like advice modes. But it's tempting, right? If you feel like
It
your
is.
reading isn't going anywhere, oh, but I want to offer this something to someone,
Yes.
wanting to give them advice or guidance. Guidance probably, I mean, it just depends where the guidance comes from, but advice or telling them what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all, for me, it's all under that same heading of programming,
Mm,
of putting in their space how it is or should be, or
yeah.
instead of just reading the pictures and telling them, and instead of staying in present time and looking at the energy, and instead of being with the discomfort of this is how it is. And
Yeah.
readings with me, you could probably guess, like for both of us, it's usually fun and validating and loving, and it feels really good
Yeah.
because we know how to talk about stuff as in a hopeful way, in a positive way, but it's the direct answer is no, but here's all the things that we can do. Here's all where you've been and where you're going. It's so beautiful. Can we continue that amazing healing process that you're in to continue? Like
Yeah.
it's a very different thing.
It is a
Um,
different thing. And I think I just want to underscore, I mean, I don't feel like this can be said enough. I mean, energy, from my perspective, energy is everything and can be shifted. It can
yes,
be moved. So just because you're feeling a certain way now, or you get a reading which notices this part of yourself, it's not definitive. It can be moved. It can be shifted. It can be healed. It's
yes,
not like whoa, it's not a predictive thing. And that's why we stay away from predictions, because I mean, the moment, if I'm asking Wendy for a reading and she's like, well, I see this thing, the moment she illuminates that, the energy is already changing.
Yes.
It's
It's
already
amazing.
changing.
It's already changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hearing it and then how we dance with that information. I mean, it's just an incredible blessing to be
Yes.
in reading space. Yeah, and even if it's just even if it's big, it's like you might be people are like, oh, but I got this at the Akashic Records. Oh, I got this from, it's like even our deepest and most, even our pre-birth agreements can be changed.
Yes.
Even our, do we want our deep agreements with others or with the divine or whatever, we can shift them
Yes.
if we choose to.
We can
And
shift
also
them.
karma, which I read as two things. I read it as a momentum and I read it as agreements. And both, again, we've said this, they can be shifted, but yes, okay, there's the karma, there it is. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Can you engage it, or are you just going to let it roll over you?
Yeah.
So, and that's, that's what we do. I'm not saying people should know how to do that. Right? I'm
No, I
saying
mean,
that's what we do.
yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of training and practice for sure. And if people aren't interested in that, then definitely get a hold of us, or ask questions about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be clear, that's, why we're getting into these conversations, because we've had a little experience with it. So we were talking about, you talked about karma,
Yes.
and you talked about agreements. And I think it might be interesting to dive into that a bit, and how you notice them and what they mean, what they can mean for someone.
Well, for me, as I said, most of it boils down to momentum, which
Mm-hmm.
we just talked about like where are we going? What are we choosing? What are our practices? What are the patterns in our system that just are consciously or unconsciously just rolling along?
Yes.
So that's a big part of it. And then agreements, and we make agreements all the time. Small ones with the daily interactions, bigger ones with people that we're in a relationship with, and then pre-birth. And how do I notice it? I see I see it. I see the agreement. That's how.
Yeah.
But you can also see the results of the agreements.
Yeah.
And the pre-birth ones are particularly interesting. And by the time I work with people, usually a lot of those agreements are like outdated. It's about like the kind of family we grew up in. It's about the kind of early life we have. It's about like how we get set off.
Yes.
A few times ago, we talked about where on the mountain do we start? Oh, okay. So I grew up in this, Catholic family in a middle class environment full of white people. It's like, okay, that's where I started, Catholic, but it's not where I end.
I just wanted to just drop in with that before we move on. Some of the things that are still in our way, they're outdated, they're irrelevant, they really
Yes.
are irrelevant, but
Yes.
because they're just unconsciously there, they're our habits, and they show up in ways that trip us up. And many of the things we may have done or agreed to for a very good reason, but they just aren't needed anymore.
Right.
So that can be a really great reason to go to get a reading, to get awareness about what those things are and where they are. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes they unpack over time, but we can really see the footprints of it in our lives by what's happening and where
Yeah.
am I stuck and where am I hurting and where am I suffering.
Yeah.
That's a really useful sign of an outdated agreement or of karma that could be cleared, which is, by agreement. And I just want to, since you brought it up, the fun thing about pre-birth agreements that I really enjoy is I see them invariably. I see them in a certain scenario, like then I know it's just like this scenario comes up, like, oh, pre-birth agreement. Like I just have this little funny picture that comes up for me. And it's basically like this little ice cream shop from the 50s with the high tables and the high chairs and eating like ice cream and laughing and being, oh, won't that be fun? You'll do this and I'll do that. No, won't that be a laugh riot? Oh, it won't.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's so
This will
like
be fun.
that's
Oh
the little
my,
paradigm, and I'm just like, oh, there it is. Let's see what disagreement is,
let's see what
and
it
because
is.
it's not fun anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that and other things. We have to take a quick break.
Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hey friends, Susana and I want to remind you that we offer a Mystic Revolution meditation. It's the first Tuesdays at 4:30 Pacific. Please come as our guest. You can see our website for the link. And thank you for playing with us.
Raise your vibration and energize your life with specialized Fibonacci tuning forks that deepen meditations and empower self-healing. Get your vibrational sound tools for personal enhancement at energybodytuners.com.
Welcome back from the break. And Wendy and I are continuing our conversation about essentially being a good reader and being a good readee. So, Wendy, want to continue?
Yeah, I'm hoping, this is our 4th season, and I'm hoping that all the 3 seasons before this are really informing, because we're constantly talking about training and healing and discernment and all the things that are like, now we're talking about how that looks. How does that look and feel in the dance of sharing soul information? So I wanted to say that. And one thing that I want to talk about is that sometimes, Rusty was talking about this a little bit before we started, our producer. Sometimes we hit a nerve when we're reading.
Yeah.
And, we hit the nerve because the nerve's exposed. And I think there's 2 things about it. One is it's emotional, and the other is that it's like, oh no, that doesn't fit, that's not me. And we talked about this as a readee. Okay, let's just put it on the shelf, see what happens. But as a reader, how do you deal with these things, Susana? And I'll talk about it too, where a nerve is exposed, so people get emotional or they get like, no, that's not true.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And usually when I see it, I know it's going to be a sore spot. I can tell it's going to be a sore spot. And so I'll always ask, do you mind if I share something that I'm noticing? And I'll always couch it by, this might sound a little bit intense at first, but I think there's some good information here. Is this okay with you? I mean, I always do that just to make sure. And I also promise that, right, and because healing, right, I also promise that if it does hit them in the wrong way, like we'll do some tending to it right away. I mean, because when I give readings, it's a healing. We're right. They are not separate.
It just comes.
Yeah. So we'll do a healing, but usually people are just like, lay it on me. Like, I came to you because I know we're going to go deep in and I am ready for whatever it is. So it usually works out. I think giving sometimes people are like, you know what, we've done a lot already, maybe next time, but giving people a choice is super helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. Making them, reminding them that they're in the driver's seat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And too much healing is not a healing. Too much information is not useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really great.
Yeah. When you were a reader, you're not just reading the person, you're reading the situation. And I mean, you're going behind, even as you are encouraging your readee to go behind. And so if you're using your own tools really well in your own discernment, you can really determine how a certain bit of information might land. What about you?
And so yes, and I'm conscious about how I'm saying it. My default is, it's always spiral. My default is always to go around the subject, circumambulate, and be like, all right, what, here's this information, and see how it lands in their space. Okay, here's this information, see how it lands.
Yeah.
And we were trained to not, there's some very, very explosive stuff that can be like early childhood trauma, basically abuse, that just like, it's not appropriate to bring it up until they're ready,
Yeah.
until they're starting to get a little bit of inkling about what's going on. And what's funny is it all depends on the readee. I mean, I just read it. I read it. I called out something like that with a friend of mine the other day. We were doing a trade, and I was just like, I just said to her, I'm just going to say this straight out. And I said it, and it's just like, it's one of the most horrible things you could say, right? But I'm just like, here's what I see. Let's figure this out,
Yeah.
but she's advanced, she's not just somebody off the street. But somebody off the street, almost never, I almost never go right for the jugular. I almost never, unless I'm led to.
Unless you're led to.
And
Yeah.
very often it works out. But I have lost clients about it. I'm just like, I have to follow spirit because that's what I do. And my default is, all this stuff. But there's times that is a healing, even if they never come back to me, to be just like, this is what I see. Rarely does that happen. But when it does, but that's what they need. And I have to allow that.
Yeah.
That's what the healing looked like. It looked like an explosion. And that's not fun when it doesn't get resolved with me. But, that, for them to like me is not the point.
Well, I think that's an important point too. I mean, a good reader is reading objectively, right? No attachment, objectively, no attachment, right? And objectively with discernment.
Yeah.
And the aim is you're not making a new friend.
No.
You're doing the work, which is to be a reader of integrity. And this is really why we're talking about all of this, all the little trip ups and pitfalls and things that can happen when your own stuff gets mixed in and when you worry, like all of these things. I mean, and I'm going to say I can always improve on my reading skill. Always, always, always.
Always, yes.
Always. And I mean, I think one of the things that I love so much about the tradition that Wendy and I come from is that integrity level is just like hammered in first. So with that in place and the idea if it is a healing, I think that helps a reader who has read something that, could be pretty intense for someone, the truth for someone, then we tend to ourselves afterwards, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Because it's not fun to have people, be unhappy or whatever it is.
No.
But that's not my job. My job is not to make them happy. My job is to serve them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a sacred role, and it's a beautiful opportunity, and usually it's appreciated.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed over time is that sometimes when I've given a reading, someone will be like, well, oh, that's interesting. That doesn't really resonate with me, but, thanks. And then a couple weeks later or a few days later, I'll get a text and I'll be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I love that.
What? Yeah. How did you sense this? How did you know this? Or wow, this thing happened and what you dropped was exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
And
that's nice.
And that can happen even when you have a reading that seems to feel like the person something lands uncomfortably with something and maybe they go away not happy. I mean, that happens too. They might circle around later and be like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know it because we're readers. We know when it doesn't land. That's the cool thing, right? Like I watch stuff not land and I watch stuff land. And I watch them be comfortable with it. And I watch them, usually they are, by the way. And I watch it be uncomfortable. Yeah. And then what I've learned to do is that I didn't do in the beginning was to address that, right? Address it and be just like, I see this not landing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
And that sometimes helps. And and sometimes I'm just like, well, how do you see this? In your everyday consciousness, how do you see this? Or with your spiritual senses, how do you see this? And, we talk about it. I remember a friend of mine who is trained there was this one thing, and she was like, well, I see it like this. And this has happened a few times with trained and untrained people. And I'm just like, well, here's the picture that I see, and it's very clear. Like, I'm just going to stand here and say, this is the picture I see, and honor your perspective. This is your perspective, and this is my perspective. And that's great, right? There's nothing wrong here. And you never have to buy my perspective, but I've said it. And then what happens can happen. And that I feel like that makes way for magic sometimes to happen.
Yeah, I do too. And the great thing is both perspectives can be equally true and exist at the same time. That's what makes it magic, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's that, like, you say a thing that you're reading in me, and I might not see it at all, but over time I might see it, or I might play with what you said. And yeah, I think, and then, right, this is the readee responsibility. A lot of people think,
Yes.
I'm a readee, I'm just going to get information, I don't have any responsibility. Absolutely not. You have responsibility to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To choose, to have the discernment, to choose, okay, this, I like this, and this, I don't buy this. The shoe is on here and off there, or whatever, in the long run. And also, oh, well, that's an interesting perspective of my life. I'll choose to shift this. I'll choose to not shift this.
Yeah. I'll explore that idea. I'll consider that, right? I'll try that on. And so when I see things like, well, I went to a psychic and they told me this, and they're upset about it. I mean,
they're just people. We're just people. We're just people that say things, and we're not always right.
And to put all your eggs in one basket, and to allow something a psychic says to determine a big decision in your life, I'm just going to say that's not being responsible with yourself.
Yes.
All psychics are just another perspective, another way of looking at something, right?
Yes. Yes, and we have choice. And I'll say I went head to head with my teacher once, which, had bad outcomes. But she wanted me to do something which would serve the organization. And I looked at it and I was like, spiritually, it looks like a good opportunity, but my body is like, no. And so, and for these other reasons too, I am saying no. And she was so pissed. And she's like, but spiritually, it looks good. I'm like, yes, but my body says no. And this other information I have says no. So I'm saying no. And right. It's just like, and she's like the most profound psychic I've ever met. But I'm just like, no. Right. My
Good
choice.
for you. Yeah.
My choice. It had difficulties in our relationship and outcomes, but I think in the long run, it had me be me as my ministry, how I do it.
Yeah.
In a way that would have been different because my body was like, no.
Yeah.
It's not just spirit that gets to make choices.
No.
And that's why, like, we have, and last time we were talking about, like, what's the physical perspective and what's the spiritual perspective, and both these are useful. And then we choose.
And, I know both of us say some of this to our readees before we give them a reading. I do with new people, right?
Yeah.
And I just think it's a responsible thing to do. I mean, when we're talking about integrity or being a good reader, I mean, we don't want anyone to give their power away. I mean, exactly the opposite, right? A reading, from my perspective, should be about a healing and inviting, encouraging the readee to step into their own power and their own knowingness and their own certainty about something. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, we could talk on and on and on and on about this.
Yeah. We love this. We're passionate about it. We do it, and it's our, it's our life.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody else is enjoying it, and I hope that it's stirring up questions, and information and ideas for people, and we'd love to hear your questions and such, and we can address those as we go on. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Please send us your questions or comment below. We really appreciate it. And so with that, we will bring this episode to a close with a little sort of outro meditation. Let's just close our eyes. And you can just do a little brush off, a little shake off of energy, right? And allow yourself to hold on to that which makes sense to you, that which feels good, and just let the rest go. And ground yourself and allow yourself to connect with the God of your heart, God, Goddess, Supreme Being of all that is, whatever makes your heart sing. And remember that you're the one driving, you're the one in power, you're the one choosing. And all of this work can be a healing if we allow it. All right. With that, we say so long, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for playing with us. Please support Mystic Revolution by liking and sharing our show.
And sign up to get notified when new content is available. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
Join us for our monthly Mystic Meditation on the first Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time.
Click on the link in the description to get more information and join the Mystic Revolution.
We look forward to seeing you then.